Before I start the video, as a quick reminder, check out my links down below to help support the channel. I am now in partnership with Baron of Dice. They have some awesome TCG accessories like playmats, deck boxes, and dice. And if you want to level up your setup, it is the perfect way to do so. And if you want to support the channel directly and get some sweet perks, consider joining the Patreon. If you want to get early access to videos or even some deck help, Patreon is where it's at. And so without further ado, let's get back into the video. Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Devin with Jurassic Magic, and in this video today I am going to be discussing the new Bruce Banner and on the backside the Incredible Hulk. And overall, I just gotta say I am pretty excited about this. The Hulk has been one of my favorite characters as far as superhero goes since I could even remember. I remember the 2003 Hulk when I was just a kid and I got those little Hulk gloves. You probably know which ones I'm talking about. My brothers and I would just beat each other up with those things, and luckily they were soft enough where it didn't hurt too bad. But besides that point, I'm going to do a little bit of a dive on Hulk and some strategies you may want to follow when building it. And so without further ado, let's get it started. So first of all, let's dive into these commanders specifically. We first have Bruce Banner. He's only 1 blue mana, which is very easy to get on the table, and he also has an activated ability. By paying XX tap, draw X cards, activate only as a sorcery, and he will transform for 2 double red and double green into the Incredible Hulk. He also has a mana cost of 2 double red and double green, so you can cast this for the front side or the back side. If you have it on the front side, you can transform him into the backside. We've seen this before previously in the Spider-Man set. However, I really dig this design. It has reach and trample and enrage. That's perfect. I could just stop there and talk about enrage because that's completely the Hulk. I am quite surprised that he doesn't have indestructible, or at least some way of getting indestructible when he gets hit or something like that, but maybe that would just be too powerful. But going back into enrage, whenever the Incredible Hulk is dealt damage, put a +1/+1 counter on him. If he's attacking, untap him, and there's an additional combat phase after this phase, and he has an 8/8 body if that wasn't enough. Also, I do like when he turns into the Hulk, he can't turn back into Bruce Banner. That is actually just a complete flavor win in my opinion.
No Banner, only Hulk!
Because the Hulk doesn't want to stop smashing essentially. And I will be honest, I am not really going to be building around the front side. It's only really just going to be a tap ability, draw a bunch of cards, which is okay, but obviously we're focusing on the backside, getting him as big as possible, swinging at people because he wants all the smoke. And so we're going to be diving into that with a couple of card suggestions. So one way you could build around this commander is putting a bunch of fight spells in here. Domri Anarchobolus is basically a great toolbox of a card. It buffs up our creatures, it adds mana, creature spells you cast can't be countered this turn. That's great, especially against the blue players. But most importantly, you pay -2. Target creature you control fights another target creature you don't control, so you could use this to get some removal in with Hulk. Obviously, you won't get that extra combat because it's not during your combat, but you will buff him up by putting a +1/+1 counter on it. You can use some instant speed spells like the last Agni Kai. Target creature you control fights a target creature the opponent controls. If the creature the opponent controls is dealt excess damage this way, add that much red mana. Until end of turn, you don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end, so that's obviously perfect because we're now making the Hulk into a firebender, getting a lot of mana so that we could cast other spells later on, and obviously it is a way to fight. I also like cards like Tail Swipe or even Prize Fight. You just fight another creature and you get some sort of ability. With Prize Fight, you get to create a treasure token, and Tail Swipe, you can cast that instant speed for just 1 mana. Another card I like in this list is Nyleith of the Dire Hunt. This is doing everything we want to because whenever one or more creatures you control fight or become blocked, you draw a card. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 2 and Gruul Hybrid. If you do double target creature's power until end of turn, that creature must be blocked at this combat if able. So this is a way where if somebody has a little 1/1 Llanowar Elves, we just swing it at them. They have to block with that Llanowar Elves. We get that Enrage trigger and trample so that we could get that extra combat. And not only that, we could just keep activating that ability each time we do swing in with our commander, doubling his power each time. Speaking of which, because you're going into those extra combats with the Hulk, I actually didn't add any extra combat cards besides the Hulk in this list, just to make it a little bit more fair. But obviously, Xenagos God of Rebels, Apandra Hunger Dominus, as well as Unnatural Growth are going to be perfect because on each combat, we're just going to keep doubling the power and toughness of our commander, which means soon it's going to be commander lethal. For just about everyone on the table, it's either they have to make the decision to block, but then you enrage the Hulk where they have to swing in again with him, or you just let him them hit you outright for commander damage, and especially if you double that damage, that is going to be pretty insane. And if you're wanting to get a lot of different extra combats, because again, it's going to happen during combat, there are some ways to doing that. You do have some like pingers that tap, we deal 1 damage, and that works fine. This kind of feels similar to Anzrag the Quake Mole in a weird way, but obviously a little bit different because you want to be dealing the damage to Hulk. So those kind of effects are okay. You do also have Pyrohemia, which is another excellent choice. You just pay 1 red mana, deal 1 damage to each creature and each player. If you have a lot of mana lying around, let's just say hypothetically you have 6 mana because you had the Hulk on the battlefield that you cast last turn, and Pyrohemia, you swing in with Hulk. In response, deal 1 damage to each creature with that red mana, get into that extra combat, and now you can do that 5 times over and make the Hulk huge in the process. But in turn, this can make the Hulk immediately arch enemy number 1 on the table. People will remove him left and right, so you may want to include other effects that have Enrage so they can get benefits out of your fight spells or damage spells. Of course, you know me, I love dinosaurs, so you can include Polyraptor, which will make a token copy of itself when it's enraged. Of course, that will multiply the more Polyraptors you put on the battlefield. You could also throw in some utility pieces like Ripjaw Raptor or even Ranging Raptors. Both of these are actually really good because they'll give you ramp and card draw whenever you deal damage to them. So every time you cast a Pyrohemia effect and deal 1 damage to them, you're going to get just that much more value. Also, another mean one is Silverclad Ferocidons. When it's dealt damage, each opponent sacrifices a permanent. That's right, a permanent, not a non-land permanent. So if people choose to sacrifice lands, that is their decision. But obviously, the more times we do this, the meaner it is going to become with this card. But I would argue the best Enrage card that you could choose from is Cacophodon. I completely butchered that name, but whenever it is dealt damage, untap target permanent. This kind of goes hand in hand with our commander, along with like a mountain on the battlefield if we have Pyrohemia. This almost acts like a 3-card combo, especially if you give it indestructible with like a heroic intervention, where on combat, you swing in with the Hulk, use the Pyrohemia mana to deal 1 damage to each creature, including Cacophodon, which will untap that red mana, and then you can repeat that process as much times as you'd like if it does have indestructible. But I'm not stopping there for enraged creatures. I also love Apex Altasaur as just a board wipe in the deck. You could just make it fight a bunch of creatures on the battlefield, let it survive, go to the next turn, maybe deal 1 damage to it, make it fight a bunch of creatures again over and over again. I love this card so much. Another card you can include is Vrondus, Rage of the Ancients. When it is dealt damage, you make a 5/4 dragon creature token, and it has the ability when this creature deals damage, sacrifice it. So obviously it's not good in that aspect, but making 5/4s consistently is actually still pretty good for blockers or swinging in with. Also, this is a little bit of a counters theme because the Hulk is putting 1/1 counters on it each time it is enraged. So I thought to include the Ozolith or even Hardened Scales. Instead of 1/1 counter, you're going to be putting 2 of them instead. That is pretty good in general. I also like Innkeeper's Talon just to protect our commander, and at the beginning of each combat on your turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control like your commander or other creatures. But not only that, you could pay just 1. Perms you control with counters on them have Ward 1, just a little way of just protecting your commander. I know Ward 1 doesn't seem like a lot, but it's still something. And obviously it acts as a branching evolution effect on that last ability. Putting double the amount of counters on a permanent or player that you put on it instead is going to be huge for Hulk, because each time the Hulk is going to be enraged, again, putting 2 counters on him instead of 1 is going to be useful. Also, another thing to note, he doesn't have haste, so we want to swing in with him right away because people will just try to remove him on board. Nothing is worse than somebody casting a board wipe just after you casted a creature, so at least getting 1 use out of him by using like a Rhythm of the Wild effect is going to be very good. Plus, it can't be countered too with that kind of card. But I do really like Frostcliff Siege. I think this is one of the better cards more people should be using in their decks. You could choose Jeskai or Teamer. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you draw a card, or you could choose the Teamer side. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and have trample and haste. This is going to be useful giving our creatures haste, and in some cases trample. I already know the Hulk has trample already, but it's just extra upside. Plus, card draw is very good. I do also want to touch on card draw a little bit because the Hulk is going to be huge on the battlefield. You can use effects like Rishkar's Expertise or even Return of the Wild Speaker, because technically the Hulk isn't a human. He has Gamma in this typing, which is kind of cool, honestly. So that is something to know. Obviously, you could include some other ones like Greater Good to sacrifice them, draw more cards, and then just cast the Bruce Banner side for pretty cheap with the commander tax, and then flip him over with that activated ability. Another card that's very underrated in my opinion that should go in more decks is Starwinder. I like this because it's more than just a coastal piracy. It's whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw that many cards. So with the Hulk at his base, when he swings in, you're going to be able to draw 8 cards. That is pretty insane, not gonna lie. So of course there's a lot of good card draw options, especially in Teamer color combination. I know this kind of feels more like a Gruul color combination deck. Really, blue is there to be splashed just for extra counter spells to protect our commander, which honestly it still makes it pretty extremely strong in my opinion. But what makes this commander strong is the fact that it does have have a 2-card combo with it, though I will say it does have some steps as far as things go. So if you use Caltrops, whenever a creature attacks, Caltrop deals 1 damage to it, and would you look at that with the Hulk, when it is attacking, when it's dealt damage, you get it to go into that extra combat, and you don't have to worry about the Hulk actually even dying in the first place, because when it's dealt damage, it is going to be basically replaced by that 1/1 counter, but it's going to increase the damage each time you go into that extra combat. So obviously there is a 2-card combo there, and that just kind of shows how powerful the Hulk is. I know it's 6 mana, and it's really just a big beefy beater, but honestly that's what I love, and honestly that's what the Hulk is all about. He just wants to fight everybody, and if people try to fight back, he just gets even more enraged. So I'm pretty excited about this commander. I think it's very interesting as far as the design goes, even though it's really just a big giant Gruul deck with a little splash of blue. But I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. What other cards did I miss? I do have a deck list down below in the description again, so definitely go check it out for yourself. So on your way out, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And with that out of the way, thank you for stomping by.